And we're back with the Screen Team here on today's Talk 930 KWOC and 93.3 FM. We're being joined by Kyle in this second half hour. We're doing sports documentaries again, and more specifically, we are taking care of the 30 for 30 documentary series. We've done a couple of these before in the past. We're doing another one. We just got done reviewing the one about Buffalo, the Four Falls of Buffalo. We have another football-related one, and this one is called Brian and the Boz. Now, Kyle, who is Brian? Who's the Boz? What's this all about?
This is all about one of the most dominant, if not the most dominant, college player, defensive player of all time, Brian Bosworth, a guy from your era. However, the Boz was a whole different animal than anything that he could have imagined or anybody else.
Now, there's a little bit of a backstory with Brian Bosworth. His father was, I don't want to say controlling, but he was hard on Brian.
Oh, extremely. If you ever get the chance to watch this, and I definitely recommend it. His father was one of those parents that just could not be pleased with anything, no matter how successful his child was. And Brian, being a very prestigious high school football player, his father was so fanatical about it that he would actually keep his box scores and all his stats from every single game. Like, this takes soccer mom to a whole new level.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
And it was kind of cool because this documentary was different because it's showing Brian Bosworth and his son going through just a whole bunch of memorabilia that was stuck in a one of those lockers from a U-Haul or something like that. It was
right, yeah.
It was an interesting situation. Brian went to Oklahoma. In his first year, he was, like you said, just a very hard-nosed, very team-oriented kind of individual. But something happened where the Boz came out. What's going on with that?
Just when it tends to happen with a lot of athletes, especially from that older or from that '80s era, where a lot of guys were trying to figure out how to market themselves. And once Brian started to see a lot of success on the field, everybody wanted a piece of the guy, and then he created this alter ego, the Boz, and you either remember him for his play or that haircut that he had when he was the Boz, and looking back on it, talking with his son, you could just tell the man was so ashamed of the things that he said, the things he did in college, and that part I thought was a really cool portion of it. Just seeing how he reflects on things as an adult now, just looking back, like, man, I was an idiot.
It was interesting to see because it was almost like he created this monster, he created this entity, but he didn't know how to get rid of it because everybody wanted it. Everybody was talking about it. It was, he got acting gigs out of it. He got photo shoots out of it. People wanted the Boz, and that controlled his way of thinking. That controlled his talking in interviews, and it was pretty much the demise of his career at Oklahoma.
Yeah, it really was. He was speaking almost like he was in another world from everybody else. Like, the Boz just overcame him to the point that he was the Boz, and it got really, really bad. And then watching later on, you see the infamous T-shirt that he made. I laughed when I first saw this, but then thought, why on earth would anybody say this? If anyone remembers watching the Orange Bowl for, I think it was 1985 or 86, he was suspended by the team, and then the NCAA would not allow him to play. So he then proceeded to create a shirt that only the Boz would say at this time. NCAA stands for National Communists Against Athletes.
And on
the bottom, it said, "Welcome to Russia," which was probably not the most politically correct thing to say at that time.
Right. So that ultimately got him kicked out of Oklahoma. And pretty much no other college football team would touch him. NCAA was, tired of him and done with him. So his next step was to go to the pros. And what happened after that?
Well, he got drafted by the Seattle Seahawks. He went as a very high pick. One thing that was interesting about it is that Brian had a feeling that he was pretty well done in terms of his body, because he did admit to taking some performance-enhancing drugs. But because the Boz was such a big brand, and you could make a star, and you could be able to have an attraction because of the Boz brand, Brian wound up being a high draft pick, higher than he probably deserved. And then, well, as we've harked back on a previous segment, the you don't know Bo 30 for 30. We remember a particular incident with him and Bosworth on Monday Night Football, where
We're
Bo
both.
kind of railroaded the Bos's career, so to speak, in one play.
But I agree with you, and but who could have made that tackle against Bo Jackson? Who could have?
At that time, maybe Ronnie Lott. I mean, very few guys were
Yeah.
running or were going to stop that freight train at that time. But to be exposed like that on that worldwide television, where you're the only game on that night, that really that ruined the guy. I mean, this was a guy who was making more money than most established stars in the NFL as a rookie and not performing up to it.
It was interesting.
So,
It was interesting to see there was two elements where you could see Brian Bosworth was hurt by the actions that the Boz did. The first one you had mentioned was the T-shirt in the bowl game. The second one was the tell-all book he wrote about his Oklahoma Sooner days, where he felt he betrayed his coach and he betrayed his team, and you could tell that definitely hurt him.
oh, definitely, it really did because it was pretty much it was a slander book. It made everybody out to look really, really bad. It frayed his relationship with Barry Switzer, who was the head coach of Oklahoma for a lot of years and was like a kind of a mythical figure down there. It really severed relationships there with the university, the football program. But as time generally heals all wounds, you'll see later towards the very end where Brian, no longer the Boz, is welcomed back to the university with open arms. He's able to enjoy being a member of the Oklahoma family like any other former player. And for him, I think that was the ultimate, solace. No longer is there the Boz. And he wanted to show his son how not to present himself as a young adult by showing him all of these pieces of memory of his career.
Yeah, it was a great documentary. I definitely liked the angle of Brian talking with his son, kind of showing him the sins of his past and trying to teach him what not to do in his young son's future. So it was a very, very good documentary. I know Kyle likes it. I like it as well. It's called Brian and the Boz. It's one of the 30 for 30 ESPN documentaries. Coming up, we'll be joined by Stacey Anderson, and we'll do one of our favorites called I Hate Christian Leitner. It's coming up next on Today's Talk, KWOC.